Hello and welcome to the JB&M Sports Fanatic channel. Thank you for joining me for this video. And today we're going to be talking about a little fantasy football, the quarterback position, and I'm going to go through this Dynasty fantasy football rankings that they currently have right now, and I'm going to tell you whether or not I agree with where they have these quarterbacks ranked. Who I think is probably someone that you want to stay away from this upcoming fantasy football season, as well as some guys that I feel are going to have either tremendous seasons, perhaps improve, just go through my thoughts on each of these quarterbacks on the list and just to have some fun with it. So we'll see how this plays out. So I'll go ahead and start at who they have ranked atop the quarterback list. So they have Patrick Mahomes listed atop the list. No surprise here. We all know that Patrick Mahomes is an extremely talented quarterback here. He's always going to be in the MVP conversation. I mean, obviously, when you throw into Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, when you have those guys on the team, and as long as they're healthy, obviously Andy Reid, as the head coach, I mean, definitely, if you have a chance to get Patrick Mahomes, definitely do so. I'd advise against perhaps doing that with your first round pick if you can help it. But if you're able to get him with your second selection, then that is tremendous. You're going to definitely have some of the better numbers throughout the entire, well, consistently good numbers, I should say. Josh Allen is who they have second. Um, I can see that Josh Allen to me, he's definitely a top five, quarterback, especially after the season that he had last year. Obviously, when you're can throw as much as he can and you run as well as he does as well. I mean, the offense runs through Josh, and that's no exaggeration. Literally, he's probably their best goal line threat when it comes to running the ball as well. So what's going to be important for him is going to be Stephon Diggs being healthy. Obviously, that's going to be huge because that was really the biggest difference between 2 seasons ago and last year. He's not as, I guess you can say, he wouldn't be as safe a pick as a Patrick Mahomes because a guy who runs as much as Josh Allen does, you run the risk that maybe perhaps an injury could occur. Not saying that that's what we're anticipating or anything like that, but there's always that risk. And just the fact that obviously Stephon Diggs is going to be a huge part of his success. So as long as those two are healthy, you're in good hands with him. Third is Kyler Murray. Um, I personally think Kyler Murray's going to have a great season this upcoming season, but I mean, if if I'm looking for the third quarterback off the board, I probably would have went in a different direction here. But that being said, I mean, we all know that last year, they acquired DeAndre Hopkins, so that right there is huge. AJ Green is going to be pivotal for his development in this season because if AJ Green comes out and looks like a tremendous a tremendous receiver, that second receiver or whatever they ask for him to be, then if he goes out there and he looks like the AJ Green that we used to know or something remotely close to that, then Kyler Murray is going to be able to take off. But I also am very cautious because I mean, he's going against, the Rams defense twice. He's going against the 49ers defense twice. Those are some tough defenses right there, So that being said, I mean, he can still have a tremendous season, but I mean, going against those guys, it's going to be tough to light it up, perhaps as much as other quarterbacks will be able to. So that's just something to keep in mind there. I mean, but yeah, definitely. He's going to be a good quarterback, though. I mean, if you have him, but definitely you don't want to get him too early, and when you can get some more talent on your fantasy team, and then perhaps pick him up later if still on that board. But I wouldn't force the issue. Dak Prescott, if it was not for his injury, I'd say, yeah, Dak Prescott, he lights it up in fantasy. But when it comes to, the injury, we all know that injury that he suffered last year. We're going to need to see one, how does that injury hold up? Is he going to come out the gates looking the same? Or is this going to be a season in which it takes him a little while to get back to it? We all know the Cowboys are filled with weapons on their offensive side of the ball. There's no question about that. But Dak, he loves to, sometimes keep the ball in them quarterback read plays, things of that sort. So it's going to be interesting to see if there's any tweak to his game, and just, how consistent he's able to be. But definitely will be a good pickup. But another guy that I wouldn't stretch to go get extremely early, but he's going to be a fantastic quarterback to have on your fantasy team. So it's just a matter of if that injury changes things or not, because they're going to have to score a lot. I mean, I know that they spent their entire draft class on the defense, but there's definitely going to have to be, he's going to have to continue to throw that ball. Zeke just hasn't been that running back that he was before the contract. So it's going to be a lot on Dak to come back and prove that he's worth that money. So that's going to be another thing. How does that money impact him? Does he go out there and it's like, oh, there's more pressure because I'm getting paid that amount of money? Or we'll see, but he got his contract now, so hopefully that helps him just in terms of just not having to worry about that and just focus purely on football. Lamar Jackson. You gotta love Lamar Jackson. You really do. I mean, people give him a knock for passing the ball. I They honestly don't have any weapons outside of tight end to throw the ball to. I mean, Hollywood's been anything but Hollywood since he's been in the NFL. But that being said, they did bring in some help throughout the draft. Bringing in Sammy Watkins. So I'm hoping that it all comes together. I mean, he did win an MVP for a reason. So if you're able to get him in that second, preferably third round area, then yes, you're getting a tremendous talent here. And we all know what he can do on the ground. There's no secret there. So in fantasy football, he can throw, he can run. He's that guy. He's gonna get in the end zone. So you definitely, if you can get him, you definitely want to get him. So I would definitely get him. I probably would have him as my third quarterback on my board, most likely. Justin Herbert. Oh man, the tremendous season that he had last year that came in clutch, and the Chargers have went out of their way to extend, to bring in more offensive line protection for him, which should only help him in year two, so he doesn't have that sophomore slump. I am not concerned whatsoever about a sophomore slump when it comes to Justin Herbert. If I got the chance to grab him, I am going to grab him. That's just going to happen. I mean, tremendous talent. I mean, it's really good player here. And I mean, it's funny how the year before he got drafted, before he decided to opt in for another year, many people viewed him as arguably the best quarterback on the board. But then he came back another year, then he just got kind of almost forgotten. So this was a steal by the Chargers for sure. So definitely, if you get the chance to get him in fantasy, I mean, he was so great last year. I actually had him on my fantasy team, picked him up via trade right before he took off. So that was fantastic there. So definitely someone that if you can get him, it would be great. Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson. We've heard during the offseason how he's not happy. He wants a better offensive line. And if you're someone that has him on your fantasy team, you're right there with him. I mean, give this man some time. He's got the weapons outside, but you do need some time to reach him. I feel like with Russ's game, he either starts off fast and then slows down, or he'll start off slow and then speed up towards the end of the season. But yeah, definitely in comparison to some of the other guys in terms of just pure fantasy, I think they've got him right about where he should be for fantasy purposes. Now, if we're talking about just a regular NFL season, then I'd have him definitely higher. But for fantasy purposes, I think that's about right where he should be on the board, honestly, in comparison to some of the others. Next up, they've got Joe Burrow. So we all know that towards the end of the season, he got hurt. And so, yeah, it was really tough seeing him carted off that field. But he's looking to be back this upcoming season. So obviously, with the Bengals, it's going to be more so just continuing to utilize, the weapons that they have. They obviously brought in, more talent throughout the draft to be able to help him out. So they'll have that, LSU connection going there. So, and that'll be great. I mean, I feel that that'll help him improve some. Maybe this might be a little high, but I can definitely see him in that range in terms of for him. So definitely good. Next up, they have Trevor Lawrence. So going to a team that, obviously at the first pick of the draft, there's going to be a lot that you normally would be like, okay, they have to develop some talent around him. But Jacksonville did bring in a lot of players. So there's a lot of questions that I would have in terms of production. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't draft them too high just because there's a lot of unknowns. Obviously, in the future, he probably will turn out to be a quarterback that you definitely want top five in your fantasy league in terms of quarterbacks being taken. But his rookie year, I want to see just how this is going to look up under Urban Meyer. Now, if he's someone that's still on the board later in the draft and you're looking for a second quarterback, then I'm all for it for sure. But just right now, just not seen him in the NFL system yet with the Jaguars, I just hold off just because of that. Same with Justin Fields, although I think Justin Fields is going to be tremendous. I'm not entirely sure if the Chicago Bears are going to right off the bat start him. I believe they'll go with Andy Dalton. So this should perhaps be someone that you can pick up late in the draft. And if that's the case, then you probably do want to stockpile on him and just see how that goes in there. Now, when he gets in there, I really like what they can do with him at quarterback. Obviously, he's got a tremendous running back on his team in Montgomery, so Montgomery may end up getting a bulk of those carries near the red zones, which for fantasy purposes might get slightly annoying. But we all know Justin Fields, he's got some speed to him too. So some of those QB keepers, that'll help as well. So we'll see how that pans out. Next is Aaron Rodgers. They did Aaron Rodgers dirty. I mean, the man finished, with an MVP last year. And so to see him down this low, I mean, I get it. There's a lot of uncertainty, like seriously, in his situation in terms of whether or not he will be with the Packers, whether or not he will retire. Personally, if we don't have any of those issues and he either says, look, I'm going to play for the Packers, or the Packers go ahead and move him, then he's for sure at the top of this list, like for sure, either before or after Patrick Mahomes, however you want to do this. But for Aaron Rodgers personally, if we reach the point during your fantasy draft and he still has a lot of questions, it's going to really come down to whether or not you want to take that risk. I remember a couple seasons ago when both Ezekiel Elliott and Melvin Gordon was both wanting new contracts for their respective teams. And so I ended up taking Zeke and it worked out. But someone took, Melvin Gordon, and that did not work out, as he did not play for at least about 8 games, I think. So yeah, just definitely you're gonna want to pay attention to all the Green Bay news when it comes to Aaron Rodgers, and make sure that you've done your homework before you take Aaron Rodgers. Because if he ends up actually retiring or opting out, it could cost you having wasted an early pick. But I mean, if you're someone that, hey, maybe you have a great draft already and you see his name up there and you're like, you know what Aaron Rodgers can do. I mean, he's definitely got it. So that'll be great, especially if it works out for the best. But this right now seems like one of the more riskier picks due to that. Next, Trey Lance. So when it comes to Trey Lance, I think he's going to be great. There's been talk about, obviously, the 49ers don't want to play him this season. So for that reason alone, I say if you can stay away for now, stay away. I mean, we all know, Jimmy's going to be playing pretty much for maybe his NFL career as a starter. We'll see that. The 49ers are basically making it known if Jimmy goes out there and light it up or he's winning ball games for them, they will stick with Jimmy. So unless you see Trey Lance just take over because he's just really like just that great right off the bat, I'd hold off on Trey Lance for a little bit. Not saying that he's a mistake or anything like that, because that's clearly not the case. Tremendous talent, but for the purpose of fantasy football, I would hold off on him for the time being. Next is Deshaun Watson. Now, when we're talking about the whole Deshaun Watson situation, obviously there's a lot that's going to have to play out for Deshaun, and there's a very real possibility that he may end up missing time this season until we figure out the full facts here. Houston's obviously putting plans in place to move on without him, so this may be someone that you may have to punt on, honestly, because it's not looking all that great right now. And we're going to have to see, we just got to wait for more information to be revealed and see how the commissioner goes about this. But from what it's looking like at the time of this video, he may be someone that you want to stay away from. But that being said, though, if things turn out and, like his name gets cleared somehow soon before the fantasy draft happens, then definitely this is someone that you want to have. I mean, this man came in clutch for me as well. I also had Deshaun Watson last year on my fantasy team, and despite the fact that the Houston Texans were losing, he still was out there putting up numbers. So the guy can definitely ball and put up numbers. So definitely another situation to monitor. So Jalen Hurts, all I can say when it comes to Jalen Hurts is that the Eagles don't seem that confident in him. So yeah, keep that in mind when it comes to taking a quarterback. Definitely don't want to take him early. You can get him later in the draft, but it's going to be one of those situations where it seems like the Eagles, when it comes to Jalen, they kind of like Joe Flacco, which I found that interesting. But yeah, they do have. It seemed like they didn't really want to trade Carson Wentz, but they couldn't work that out either. So it seems like anyone but Jalen is who they wanted to be the starting quarterback. Now, obviously, they did draft him the year before, But I'm not entirely sure that they're all sold on Jalen. And it seems like it's going to be a quarterback competition. So if Jalen goes out there and he struggles, there's a real risk that Joe Flacco could be thrown in there at various points throughout the season. So that's something to keep an eye on. We don't have enough footage on Jalen in terms of just being a full-time quarterback. So I would have him lower on this list. And I mean, the Eagles didn't necessarily seem like they went out of their way to, get that much more help at the receivers positions. Although I do think that, Jalen could turn out to be good, but, it's just one of those for fantasy purposes. If you're trying to, play it safe, there are other options on the board. So I probably would have Jalen lower. Speaking of other options on the board, Matthew Stafford, for them to have him this low. Yeah, Matthew Stafford would definitely be someone to keep an eye on. I mean, now he's going to have, a great defense to work with. The Rams, they do have some good receivers. So, yeah, I expect, he's going to come in and he's going to do pretty good, I think. So I probably would have him a little higher than a few of those quarterbacks that I've seen there. So, yeah, definitely someone that if you can get, yeah, definitely be a good pickup there to have on your roster. Ryan Tannehill. So Ryan Tannehill, in my opinion, he's one of those quarterbacks that'll be a steal. I mean, obviously you don't think about him when you think, top five fantasy quarterback, but you probably should. I mean, if it wasn't for his reputation for early in the league, he probably would be much higher on this list because that's honestly the only thing that's really hurting him. I mean, Ryan Tannehill, according to Pro Football Focus, he was fourth on their list in terms of the actual QBR rating. So yeah, last year he was just behind Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, and Josh Allen. So with that being said, I mean he's obviously going to be a steal, especially if they have him ranked that low. So to be able to get a quarterback of that caliber, yeah, that's going to really help your fantasy team and probably make sure that you're playing in the playoffs. I'll just go ahead and say that. Next up is Baker Mayfield. So when it comes to Baker, obviously the Browns, they made the playoffs for the first time in forever, it seems. And so this is a guy who's definitely helping the Browns, rise up. And then we're gonna have to see how things look once Odell Beckham gets back in the picture. Obviously, having Odell, that's gonna help in terms of having just more talent, but it's gonna be on Baker and Odell to make sure that they're on the same page and that he's just not trying to force feed the ball to Odell, otherwise that could severely hurt him. So that's someone that if he's there later and you still need a quarterback, I say yeah. But early on, there's probably some other options that you can go with. But if you have him, he'll be a solid option for you. So solid option. Tua Tagovailoa. Well, I mean, the Dolphins have went out of their way to make sure that they add a lot of help for him. So this is going to be one. I mean, last year, a lot of people, including myself, was a little irritated when Ryan Fitzpatrick got pulled. So, just for fantasy purposes, I mean, Ryan was going out there doing great. I felt like at the time that he got pulled, but that definitely gave Tua some chance to, get accumulated to the speed of the NFL. Then a whole offseason, some changes made. So we'll see how he's able to make a leap next year. But yeah, definitely someone that, in your fantasy league, I mean, if you get him, there's going to be a risk. We heard about the thousands of injuries that Tua has had, at that point. So definitely want to be mindful of that. He is an injury risk and just a risk in general because there were games last year that he did not look that impressive. And then during the offseason, the Dolphins, it seemed like they took some time to consider whether or not to go after a quarterback, and they opted not to. It just didn't make sense to draft back-to-back quarterbacks. But yeah, Tua's going to have to go out there and show us something first. So, I mean, if you can get another option, I would probably lean in that direction. So, but I mean, he has all the potential in the world now. Let's not confuse that. So we'll see if this works out for him. It's just really, really tough in that division, especially with defenses, like the Patriots, the Bills. So we'll see how it works out. Next, a guy like Zach Wilson. Now, another rookie quarterback, but obviously he's got to do a lot for the Jets right off the bat. And, I mean, of all the quarterbacks drafted, his situation may be the toughest situation to walk directly right into. I mean, he's got some okay receivers, some okay to good receivers, but no elite receivers. So that's obviously going to be something. But they did bring in, a couple guys this offseason, and they really have tried to put some pieces around him more than they've done for Sam Darnold throughout the year. So This will be an interesting one, but I mean, if you're gonna go with a rookie quarterback, then you probably can go with Zach Wilson, probably, if you're going to go with a rookie quarterback for the season, because you know without a doubt that both him and Trevor Lawrence are going to be starting. And so the only difference is they may have to require that Zach Wilson do even more than what Trevor does, because Trevor is going to have some running backs with him. But Zach Wilson, he's got to carry the bulk of this team. So we'll see how that works out for him. It's going to be a lot of pressure for him. So definitely someone that if you take him, you may want to make sure that you have another quarterback, just and then just start him based upon the matchup. If it's a favorable matchup for the Jets offense, then sure. But definitely, just monitor that situation. Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins, well, they've got tremendous receivers down there in Minnesota, that's for sure. So there will be games that Kirk will go off, that is for sure. Then there will be other games where it seems like Kirk Cousins will be off. Whether it's because Dalvin Cook is rushing for 300 yards, and so they're just not utilizing him, or perhaps the defense is just getting a lot of pressure on him. So Kirk is one of those quarterbacks that's going to be dependent upon the matchup that you're going against in terms of starting. Carson Wentz. So this is one that you'll get Carson late, but if Frank Reich really knows what he's doing with Carson, this could turn out to be a steal in your fantasy league. It just depends on what you believe. I mean, if you believe that Carson, can return to what he was before, and he hasn't been sacked too much to where he's lost confidence, then yeah, this could definitely turn out to be a quarterback who is one of those that went under the radar and then just turns out to have a tremendous season. So I think that could very well happen. He's got all the potential in the world, all the skills. And so hopefully, he's developing into more of a leader. Obviously, he's, had a tremendous season before he got hurt the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl, and that showed what he's capable of. So if the Colts are getting that version of him, then that's someone that you're going to want to pick up for sure. Matt Ryan. I'm sure that nobody was more happier than Matt Ryan when the Falcons made their pick. But one thing that you're going to want to keep an eye on is the Julio Jones situation for sure, whether or not the Falcons end up trading him. If they end up keeping Julio, Matt Ryan is someone that you want to keep around, perhaps as your QB2, or even if he's your QB1. I mean, he's going to have games where he goes off, that's for sure. Then you add Kyle Pitts to the mix as well. And yeah, that could really make some numbers. And he knows he's playing for his NFL career at this point. I mean, there was so much talk about replacing him. So I'm sure that he's heard the noise. So he's going to be even more motivated. And the Falcons, they typically have, they don't have back-to-back bad years, I guess you can say. So yeah, we'll see how that plays out. Obviously, guys like Julio, they tend to, even if he does return, sometimes, he does deal with injuries and stuff. So that could impact Matt Ryan, but definitely enough upside there to where, if he's there on the board later in the draft, that's someone you can pick up. Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes here. So Daniel Jones, the Giants have really went out there and got some weapons, I feel, just to add to their team. So I expect that Daniel Jones, he can progress. I would not, say that he's going to be a top 10 quarterback or anything of that sort, but he can definitely improve upon, what he's done in the past, and if he holds on to the ball better, protects the ball, then that's only going to make him better. So someone that you can keep around as a QB2, especially if you're in a larger fantasy league. So Mac Jones, I feel like the Patriots are going to start off with Cam Newton, although the fan base is going to be wanting Mac Jones to go out there. The Patriots are going to be patient with this one. They understand it's just a long-term game, so I don't expect for Mac Jones to see much of the field this season. Yeah, I just don't see that happening unless like Cam Newton gets injured or something like that, and then Mac Jones just comes in and then just starts, lighting it up. So I think they're going to take their time implementing him. So he's someone that I just would not take as of right now unless an injury or something happened. Derek Carr. Derek Carr's always got something to prove. So definitely, if you get the chance to get Derek Carr, he's probably someone that you're going to want to pick up in terms of like, in free agency to start for a game or two here or there, as opposed to actually drafting him. I mean, the Raiders, they can use like a guy like Henry Ruggs to step up. That would really help someone like Derek Carr, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out for the Las Vegas Raiders. So definitely someone that if he's on your board, I mean, maybe towards the end of the draft, if you really want to take him, I mean, the upside is there. If Henry Ruggs turns out to reach his potential, then I think that moves up Derek Carr on this list. But it's going to be really dependent upon that. And then Tom Brady, they got Tom Brady way too low on this list. Way too low on this list. He should be much higher, much higher, much higher. He's going to have a Tom Brady like season. And by that, I mean, I'm not expecting that he's going to exceed, 40 passing touchdowns, but he'll be somewhere in the 30s. And so definitely will be someone that if you get a chance to get him, especially since you'll be able to get him late, hey, your fantasy team will be in a very great spot. And so then Sam Darnold, new situation. I feel that Sam Darnold's going to have his best year as a pro this upcoming season. He's definitely going to have the most talent in which he's ever had to work with. So, yeah, and then throwing it out the backfield to a guy like Christian McCaffrey, especially if Christian McCaffrey stays healthy, yeah, that's definitely something that can play out well for a guy like Sam Darnold. So, obviously, you're going to want to see what he can do first. But if you get the chance to get him at the very end of the draft and you're just looking for perhaps a second quarterback, then by all means, I definitely would pick him up. Definitely. Because I think he's going to turn out to be a great pickup. And so from there, Jared Goff. I would avoid Jared Goff. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's not Jared Goff. It's just Detroit lost a lot of their receivers that they had starting last year. They're working on the offensive line, which is great. But I mean, Jared Goff had a lot more talent last year, and that didn't work out so great for him. So yeah, definitely I wouldn't take him. Wouldn't take him. Jameis Winston, either him or Taysom Hill, they got them side by side. It's going to be up to Sean Payton, but after the stunt he pulled last year, starting Taysom Hill, I would wait and see which direction Sean Payton goes in terms of his QB1. If it's Taysom Hill, yeah, I'm staying away from that, far, far away from that. If it's Jameis Winston, though, he has some upside to him. We all know that he can throw the ball. We all know he can throw touchdowns. It's going to be the turnovers that hurt you. So it may be dependent on how your fantasy league is set up. If your fantasy league is set up to where you are penalized for all those interceptions, then yeah, don't take them. But if your fantasy league isn't extremely harsh on turnovers when it comes to quarterbacks, then he may be someone that you perhaps pick up, as a free agent or something if a guy goes down, or either late in the draft. Because I do feel that if you have him in your fantasy league, that he's going to be throwing some touchdowns. So definitely, if Jameis turns out to be the starter, I would value him a little higher than I would Taysom Hill. Let's see, Cam Newton. I feel Cam Newton's going to start off the season, and I feel that he'll get off to a quick start like he did last year. Obviously, COVID ruined that momentum, but Cam realizes this is where the rubber has to meet the road here. Like, if it doesn't happen this year, it's just not going to happen, at least not with the Patriots, and he'll have to, settle for a backup position for sure. And he knows the writing's on the wall. New England's took their quarterback, so he's really auditioning for whomever is looking for a quarterback next year. His style of play, the difference is here at fantasy football, rushing touchdowns still do count. I know a lot of Patriot fans do not like the fact that Cam doesn't throw his touchdowns, but rushing touchdowns do count in fantasy football as well. So Cam, he's someone that I think he'll do better than what he did last year. I don't know what better is going to look like, but he's got better weapons. So I'll say he'll do better than he did last year. Drew Lock, I would absolutely avoid Drew Lock. Not only the risk that Aaron Rodgers potentially gets traded to the Broncos and then he ends up being a starter, if that does happen in that scenario, but yeah, Drew Lock, Teddy Bridgewater, whoever starts, I feel like they're going to end up getting benched and replaced by the other quarterback. So I just wouldn't take a Denver Bronco quarterback. I just wouldn't do it. Jimmy Garoppolo, oh man, this man, if you take him, just make sure you got some good backups. I mean, because Jimmy, he can go out there and he can do good. When he plays, he can do good, but he seems to always get injured. And then obviously we know that they went and got Trey Lance. So it may just be best, if you do pick up Jimmy Garoppolo, make sure you've got other quarterbacks on your roster as well. Ben Roethlisberger. Ben Roethlisberger. Oh man, I feel like Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, he's had such a tremendous career, but I think they've got him about where he should be, as he clearly needs to retire after this season. It's just, yeah, almost tough to watch at times, especially when they started off 11-0, then afterwards, that just fell apart. They're going to have to really, really protect Ben Roethlisberger and run the football. So a lot of the would-be touchdowns that he normally would get in the past is probably going to go to the running backs. So yeah, Najee Harris would be someone that I would probably pick up, at that position. But Ben Roethlisberger, as a backup, perhaps, just to have him there. He is a vet, but yeah. Other than that, yeah, I wouldn't want him as my starting quarterback. Not this fantasy season. Jordan Love, that's going to be dependent on the Aaron Rodgers situation. So if Aaron Rodgers plays, yeah, that's not happening. But if Aaron Rodgers got traded or retires, then Jordan Love would seriously move up on this list. And we have not seen him at the NFL level. But I just get the feeling that if he got his opportunity, he would do pretty good. So I would not draft him too high, but you can get a guy like that extremely low. Matter of fact, he would, depending on when the whole situation Aaron Rodgers plays out, he probably would be available. Then as soon as you hear the news with Aaron Rodgers, you're going to be trying to find Jordan Love first and see if you can get him on your fantasy team first, because that would be a good pickup. I feel. Ryan Fitzpatrick, he was very magical last year. It's the only issue with him is going to be consistency. We're going to have to see how he looks with a new team. But hey, if you get a chance to get him late and you're in a deep league, do it. We'll have to see how this plays out. But yeah, definitely a veteran. So if you happen to need someone to rely on, maybe pair him with a rookie or something like that in terms of on your fantasy team, then yeah, I mean, if you're taking this guy, then that probably means that you worked on your other positions earlier in the draft. So yeah, definitely can understand that. Mitchell Trubisky, all I can say is just stay away from him. Stay away from him. He's going to be a backup, that's for sure. So yeah, Andy Dalton, I expect Andy to start, but I don't expect him to finish the season. And when he does start, I don't expect for him to light it up. So I stay away from Andy Dalton as well. And it seems like the rest of these quarterbacks on the list are just people that are going to be potentially backups there. So yeah, we'll go ahead and pull it here. But yeah, so these are my evaluations in terms of how I view these quarterbacks, for fantasy football purposes. So thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you enjoyed it. And as always, hey, I'm more than happy to talk a little fantasy football. So do leave in the comments if this is something that you appreciate. Me doing more stuff like this. Was this helpful? Or just, your inputs. What do you think about some of these quarterbacks? Which ones do you agree with? Which ones do you disagree with? Love to hear your opinions. So thank you so much for joining for this video and have a great rest of your day.